Let's talk about the fantasy football playoff strength of schedule to help you win a championship. What's up, guys? Zach Brunner here from Flurry Sports, and today we're talking about the fantasy football playoff strength of schedule heading into Week 12, more specifically for the DST, the defense and special teams position. For many, this is the trade deadline for your fantasy league, so a lot of moves are going to be made this week. If you're feeling good about your team and you're locked for the playoffs, now is the time to look ahead and make sure you do not get screwed by playoff matchups. How many times have you dominated the regular season, you get to the fantasy playoffs, and then you get upset right away? You have a stinker, you have a letdown performance. This is a good way to at least lessen the chance of that happening. All this data can be found in the link in the description. You can become a member for $5 per month to get this and all other kinds of data like my opportunity index and stuff like that. This is updated weekly. So this is before Week 12. This will be updated before next week, the week after, all the way up until the fantasy playoffs. I'm here to help you win a championship. If you want other strength of schedule videos for other positions, definitely like this video, subscribe, and comment down below. If you have any other questions, by the way, drop those down below. I also have an announcement at the end, so if you watch until the end of the video, I would be eternally thankful. But let's just jump into the fantasy football playoff strength of schedule. For clarity, these are weeks 15 through 17. We're not doing that week 18 bullcrap, and we're not starting in week 14. So week 15, 16, and 17. Let's jump into it. So when you get the fantasy data, you enter the spreadsheet like so. And today we're talking about the DST position. So let's sort this. Green means good, red means bad. You guys got it figured out, which means the fantasy playoff strength of schedule for DST, the easiest one belongs to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're talking weeks 15 through 17. The Steelers are interesting. They started the year so poorly. They were a bad defense up until a couple of weeks ago, to be completely honest. They moved Jalen Ramsey back to traditional safety. They got Duggar there. And they've been flying around playing much simpler schemes, and it's just really benefited them a lot. So not only do they have an easy end of the year, but they also have been playing very, very well. Let's take a look at their schedule. So, I mean, they're home against Miami. Miami's playing better, but you still like that. They go to Detroit in week 16. So if you can figure out a better week 16 defense, that would be great, because the championship week, league championship week, to Cleveland. They get to play the Browns. I absolutely love that. Let's take a look at their ownership and just how they have been. So like I said, they've been playing a bit better. They're up to 67% ownership in ESPN Fantasy. And I mean, that makes sense. But that means, I mean, 1/3 of leagues are still out there. But yeah, take a look at this. Inconsistent at best, obviously. A couple negative weeks in there. They were pretty terrible. And then they got 16 against the Colts. They got 22 this past week against the Bengals. You can see their sack totals have picked up. I mean, they got sacks all over the place, but they're just playing much, much better. They're allowing much fewer points, 20, 23, and 12. Up until the playoffs, it's definitely some interesting and difficult matchups. Starting with the Bears this week, Bears are playing well, and then Buffalo, Ravens. And then as soon as you get to the playoffs, they're good to go. So, I mean, this is a defense, if they are currently owned, there's a very good chance they're going to be dropped before the playoffs in this Buffalo and Baltimore region here. If people aren't looking ahead like you are, they may drop them. So keep your eye out on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if you have them, do your best to hold them. But let's take a look at what week 16 is, because potentially there's an easier matchup for us if we can hold the Steelers for 14 and 17. Week 16 is what we're looking at right now. I mean, Buffalo, as bad as Buffalo has been against Cleveland, that's not the worst matchup for them. The Chiefs against Tennessee would be fantastic. Potentially the Vikings against the Giants would be good. I mean, if you can make this work, holy crap. If you compare Houston and Pittsburgh, that's going to be very tough to do, but that would be awesome. If you could go Pittsburgh in 15 and 17, and then you got a nice little Houston matchup against the Raiders there in week 16, I would love that, absolutely. The second easiest schedule is that Houston defense. So if you could somehow pair number 1 and 2 together for you, that is a recipe for success down the way. Houston's been very good all season long. They're one of the best defenses in real life and in fantasy right now. Houston plays home against the Cardinals, home against the Raiders, at the Chargers. The Chargers one could certainly be tough, but I'm not shaking in my boots at the sight of it. So Houston, across the board. If you are going to own one fantasy defense, maybe they're the one to own. They're probably a better defense in Pittsburgh, just in real life. And these matchups, even though it's not number one, I think overall consistently it's a better matchup schedule for them. Houston, though, is going to be one of the highest owned defenses, 95% owned. There's a defense I will talk about later in the toughest matchups, and maybe you could pull off a trade to get them. Never know. Maybe there's a certain Pacific Northwest defense that has sell high written all over them. But let's talk about first the third best schedule for the fantasy football playoffs belongs to the Arizona Cardinals. Let's see where the Cardinals rank. In my mind, they're middle of the road. They've had good performances. They've had bad performances. So bottom half, but average, I would say. They're owned in under 8% of leagues, so maybe it's a nice little opportunity for them. Like I said, they've had some good weeks. I mean, Carolina, they were good. Dallas, they were very good. But overall, average to below average. Fantasy playoff start, they go at Houston, which isn't necessarily scary. They're home against Kirk Cousins' Atlanta Falcons now. And then they go to Cincinnati, which who knows what Cincinnati's going to be at that point. It could be Joe Burrow for whatever reason playing. I can't imagine they're still in the playoff hunt. But maybe Joe Burrow's playing. Maybe Joe Flacco's playing. Maybe Jake Browning is playing. And if Jake Browning is playing again, obviously that looks very good. But the Cardinals could be that deep league budget defense that you look to just because the matchups are pretty good. But overall, I wouldn't necessarily sell out for that defense. But let's flip this thing around here and talk about the toughest fantasy matchups. The toughest fantasy football playoff strength of schedule for defenses belongs to the New England Patriots. And the Patriots are a defense that a lot of people own. I mean, they've been pretty good this year, and they've had extremely easy matchups, right? They are the fifth highest scoring defense. They're owned in 88% of leagues. Let's take a look at what that schedule is going to be. So, I mean, talk about a tough schedule. They have a bye in week 14, so you can't even use them. And then into the playoffs, they got home against Buffalo. Don't love that. At Baltimore. Don't love that. And then if you survive, you get the Jets in the championship week, which is great. But you got to survive until then. So maybe, just maybe, you can pick them up in the middle of the fantasy playoffs or something for that championship week. But I want no part of them before that. You know, they got the Bengals, they got the Giants, then they have a bye week. So yeah, you're going to be dropping them in their bye week anyways. This is not a defense you need to hold on to. If you could somehow trade them to a desperate team, you know, maybe a part of a package or something, because they're looking at Bengals after last week, Bengals without Jamar Chase, and then they have the Giants. Maybe someone desperate needs the Patriots, and you were looking ahead and saying, hey, I want no part of the Patriots when the lights are brightest, when it matters most anyways, so you can trade them away. Green Bay is going to be the second toughest schedule. Green Bay has a boatload of divisional games coming up. Let's take a look at where Green Bay ranks. Not the best, probably. Middle of the road, I would say. But they're owned in 85% of leagues because of all those first rounders on their defense, because of Micah Parsons. They fly around. They've had a lot of low point total allowed games. Obviously, look, 20, 10, 16, 25, 23, but then 18 again. They got a couple 13s up here. They are a very consistently okay defense. They are rarely going to kill you. They're rarely going to be the reason you win. And that's because they don't really force turnovers, but they'll get a couple sacks and they haven't been giving up many points. But looking ahead to the fantasy playoffs, at Denver, which I suppose from a defensive standpoint could possibly be okay. Broncos offense isn't great. They go to Chicago. Chicago's been good. And then in the cold, in the December snow in Lambeau Field, they got to tackle Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson in your fantasy football championship week. I hate that from a fantasy football standpoint, and I hate that as a Packer fan. So avoid the Green Bay Packers if you can. They're not a must sell just because they have been pretty consistent. But then let's talk about the highest scoring fantasy defense so far this season. Seattle has the third toughest schedule in, you know what? Maybe this is a situation where you can sell this defense. There's few defenses you can actually sell for value, but Houston's one of them, but they have a good schedule. You don't want to do that. Seattle, the highest scoring defense all the way to the top here. They're 84% owned, so not as much as some of the higher profile, more exciting defenses. But they've scored a bunch of touchdowns. They're the highest scoring defense here. Looking at that schedule, week 15, they have the Colts. Don't love that. Week 16, they have the Rams. Don't love that. And then week 17 is the Panthers. Panthers you're not scared of, but the Panthers are a team that really isn't turning the ball over right now. So it's probably a average performance. You're probably looking at a 6-7 point performance, which again is fine, but it's not going to necessarily win you a championship, and you don't love the matchups before that. So this is the week, man. It's the trade deadline, and Seattle gets to play the Titans. If you do not need a win this week, go ahead and trade Seattle. Package them with somebody. Maybe you can get standalone value depending on the depth of your league. But Seattle is a defense that you can trade, turn a profit, and you're better in the long run anyways. I mean, this is a league-winning championship trade that you can pull off this week. Go ahead and do that. And if you have any questions on specific trades you can pull off, if you have the Seattle defense, ask away in the comments below. So that's the fantasy data we're going over today, but there is that big announcement. Thank you for hanging around till the end. We are nominated for a couple of awards. There's these local awards here in Wisconsin called the Volume 1 Best of Awards, and we really need your help to win. We're nominated for the best podcast and the best local news writer, me. All you need is an email to sign up and vote. They're not going to spam you. It's completely free. And if you have multiple emails, if you want to make more emails, all of that is extra votes to help us win. Please take a couple seconds and vote and help us win, because if we do win, there's this big award show. I get to give a nice speech, and I will record that and put that right on this channel for you guys. You guys get to pick whatever you want me to say. I promise I will say it. Link in the description below to go to volume1.org. You can vote for best podcast and best local news writer. For podcast, we got two. We got the Flurry Sports Podcast and Lombardi Sweep. And under the best local news writer, that is Zach Brunner, myself. You just listened to me for a few minutes here, and I hope you come back and listen to me a little bit more, talk about more fantasy football and more good stuff. The soon-to-be award-winning YouTube channel. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for hanging out. Goodbye.